Hello, my narcissistic abuse family. Today I'm covering the topic of trauma bonding as it relates to narcissistic abuse and those relationships. I don't really like to refer to them as real relationships because we all know they're very one sided, and the victim is the contributing partner that really has the illusion that it's a real relationship, even though they're being targeted and abused all the while. The narcissist is never fully invested. They do not ever open themselves up to be vulnerable or susceptible to real love and true feelings, and they're also incapable of true love and companionship and connections. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of boring background because I love psychology, and the more you know, the more you grow. So, trauma bonding is very similar to Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome was actually, the name of it was originated back in 1973. A Jan Erik Olsen was a prisoner on leave, and he decided to rob a bank. So when he did that, he accrued four hostages, four bank employees, and he held them hostage in the bank's vault. So while he was doing this, he demanded that his former cellmate join him in his endeavor. His former cellmate was Clark Olofsson, and he joined him in the bank. They were negotiating. Ultimately, they were able to free the hostages rather. But ironically, one of the hostages became friendly with one of the captors, Olsen. And one of the hostages, her name was Kristen Enemark. I don't know, I'm probably butchering all these names. But they meet occasionally, and even their families became friends. And this all happened in Stockholm, Sweden, hence the name. So that's where the origin of Stockholm Syndrome came from. The difference between Stockholm Syndrome and trauma bonding is that Stockholm Syndrome is when there's a captor, a kidnapper, there is a crime occurring, and a trauma bond is when people are in a relationship and one of the parties is a narcissist in our case. So there's another example. I just want to get this out of the way as well. Patty Hearst later this is one of the more notorious Stockholm Syndrome situations. She was, on February 4th, 1974, she was 19 years old, and she was kidnapped from her apartment in Berkeley, California. She was a millionaire heiress, so her family had buku money. And the group that captured her was a left-wing urban guerrilla group calling themselves Symbionese Liberation Army, SLA. So she formed a relationship with these people. She really embraced them. And on an audio tape on April 3rd, she actually took on the name Tanya, and she joined them on April 15th. She was photographed actually participating in some of their robberies. She robbed a bank. So that was Patty Hearst. And she was actually pardoned as one of President Clinton's final presidential acts in January 20th, 2001. President Clinton granted her a full presidential pardon. So that's the background. That's the history behind this all. This I did not know, which I thought was so interesting, is that there's actually an inverse of the Stockholm Syndrome called Lima Syndrome. And that's where the captor, the abductor, develops sympathy and feelings for their hostages. Just a little trivia for you. So, in the capture bonding response, it's deeply ingrained in the human psyche that its activation or partial activation could help explain the counterintuitive behavior of some hostages, where they don't want to testify against their captors or incriminate them in any way. This also explains why people engage in and stick with, a few examples are like religious cults, abusive relationships, sadomasochistic sexual practices, etc. Related to narcissistic abuse, we're going to speak about trauma bonding. And this is when an individual finds themselves in a relationship with a narcissist, and the narcissist is crafty and manipulative, so they're intermittently using the honeymoon stage. They are wooing their victim through love bombing, hoovering if you start to stray, but at the same time, they're intermingling it with devaluation, cutting their partner down, whatever, so that the victim in this relationship, the victim of narcissistic abuse, you become so confused, and sometimes I think as well, it's almost intoxicating. It almost becomes challenging to try to win over the narcissist's love. And the victim often will blame themselves and try to rationalize what they did wrong to cause the narcissist to stray from them, to back out of the relationship, to alter their behavior so negatively. Trauma bonding is where people develop feelings of trust and affection for people that are treating them poorly, abusively in a relationship. It's a type of survival strategy, actually. In a trauma bond, the partner of the narcissist often has codependency issues. And I'll tell you, myself personally, I am ferociously independent. I think that has something to do with my upbringing in a toxic family with a narcissistic mother. But the word codependency makes me cringe. But when you put it into perspective and you realize that if you're an empath, I myself am, you're very attuned to other people's feelings, and you become so accommodating to how they feel. So that's where the codependency comes from, is that our reactions and behaviors are altered to accommodate the other partner, in this case, the narcissist. So that's where the term codependency comes from. So the narcissist is so good at crazy making, gaslighting us, confusing the heck out of us, that the good times in the relationship are often overshadowed by the bad, by the abuse, by the devaluation, the narcissist cutting you down and making you question yourself and feel badly about yourself. They erode your mental, emotional, sometimes it's physical abuse as well. The victim often believes that they just need to do something to fix this. They try to understand what are they doing wrong to correct this situation, to bring the narcissist back to the good times, to the doting, love bombing person that they thought they fell in love with. The more the codependent person reaches out to the narcissist for love, recognition, and approval, the more the trauma bond is strengthened. And the codependent will stay in the relationship when the abuse escalates, and it creates a very destructive, toxic cycle, as we know. Breaking free from this, it's helpful to speak to a counselor, a life coach, or something of that nature. And there's several strategies that you can use to ensure that this doesn't happen again. That happens a lot with people that are in a narcissistic relationship. You find yourself repeating the same dynamic and you're like, it's wrong, but you can't figure out why. So in order to stop this from repeating, you can seek counseling or a coach or something of that nature. And there's several strategies that can help you. The first strategy is separating from the narcissistic partner physically and emotionally in order to move forward. The second one is acknowledging your own choice, to realize that the narcissist was gaslighting you, emotionally abusing you, criticizing you, and controlling you. The addictive aspect of the relationship was all the hard work you had to put in. You always had to be on your toes, you always had to be alert, you always had to be in tune to this person. So in some respects, I believe that they just consume you. And, I'm thinking back to my own experience, and I feel like it's just so, like, I was in my young 20s when I went through this romantic relationship, and he was older than me, like 10 years older, and he cut me down so strategically over an extended period of time. I had to think about this before I made this video because I was really trying to get my facts straight, and I sat down and thought about it, and I was like, gosh, this relationship that I had went on for, when I turned 21 till I turned 20, it was only like 4 years. You guys, it felt like an eternity because it was such torture. It was so volatile. Like, we were breaking up like every other week, and I was so gaslighted. He crazy made me like nobody's business. And at the time, I had a great job. I was earning my graduate degree. I had a lot going for me. But he strategically dismantled my self-confidence, always made me question myself, to the point where everything revolved around him, and I was always like, what can I do to make him pay attention to me, to make him like me, to make this better? What do I need to do? Because that's what mature adults do in a two-way relationship. You're always trying to better yourself. You're always, analyzing your actions and your behaviors and how you can best serve this relationship. It takes two people. But when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, they don't care. They are totally removed from the emotional element. They're like a cat, like batting around a mouse, and we're the mouse. It's sad. It's incomprehensible that anyone could have such a disregard for someone else's feelings and emotions. But remember, narcissists have no empathy. They have no empathy at all. Doesn't faze them if someone's hurting, or if they're the one hurting them. They don't care. All they care about is forwarding their own agendas. So if you have been, I got this question recently. If you've been repeating the cycle of being engaged in relationships with narcissists, it's because we just need to identify and break the cycle, potentially with a counselor or a coach. It's a trauma bond. And understand that the narcissist does a lot of things to get us caught in this web. So it's hard not to blame ourselves, but really there's no shame in being a kind and decent, trusting human being. And that's what the narcissist looks for. And they use tons of strategies. They will use triangulation, getting other people to see you as the bad person. They will devalue you. And, in my case, ultimately, I was discarded, cast aside, because I started to kind of wake up to what was going on, and he didn't like that, so he just moved on to the next supply. Trauma bonding. This can also be applied to a narcissistic parent. I found myself, that's why it takes us so long to get away. And I've racked my brain, like, what took me so long? I'm almost 40 years old. And, I went to college. College was my escape. I was so excited. I was 17 because I was young for my grade. But I couldn't wait to go to college and move out and move on campus. And even with that, I was only 20 minutes away from my house. And I'm like, why didn't I leave the state? Why didn't I just beat feet and get the heck away? It's a trauma bond. As a child of a narcissist, you just keep hoping that they're going to love you, that they're going to get better, and that you're going to do something that's going to fix this. There's no fixing it. It's a trauma bond, and that's what keeps us going. There's no shame in, like I said, being a good, decent person. It's the narcissist's doing, taking advantage of our kindness. So we're bummed. I hope this video was of value to you. I hope you took something away that is useful. We're all learning about this together. I'm sorry, I'm about to choke. We're bumped and we're bruised, but more than anything, we're blessed because we're learning about this. We're overcoming this trauma. We're better people for it. We love and appreciate authenticity and genuineness like most other people do not. God bless you guys. I'll see you soon.